presentation and a little card. Yes, you. Okay. For the next 5 or 6 hours, we figured we'd talk about networking. And by the end, you'll really be experts. One of the things that I'd like to just point out, if you're in an environment like this, right, not every meeting that you go to where you're going to be doing networking, people are going to take the time to do brief introductions. But if they do, and you're really coming to the event to actually do some networking, what you might want to consider doing is taking notes on every single person that presents, so that not only do you learn their name, you'll learn a little bit about what their interests are, and when we get to the breaking point at the end, you know exactly who you're going to run up to and attempt to have a conversation with. The other thing that we're going to talk a little bit about too is that when you exchange cards with people, one of the things that most people do is that they get a card from the other person, right? They give them a card. You know, one of the things that most people do is they'll say, "Can I have your card?" And they'll go like this with their card, and they'll take the card and they'll stick it in their pocket. But you lost out a really great opportunity to build up some rapport with the other individual, because part of even exchanging cards in the world of networking, doing it the right way, actually benefits you in terms of presenting your card, in terms of when the other person presents, gives them your card, even if they just hand it to you. If you take a look at it and you read the card, it shows respect right off the bat. So you're starting to build up some additional credibility. And then what I'll be talking about is that when you meet people and you're talking to people, you should be taking notes actually on the card, so that at the end of the conversation, right? I mean, in this room there's only 10 people, so it's not a really large group. And maybe after you've left here, you'll remember all the conversations that you've had. But I don't. I mean, I talk to a lot of people, and I'm sure that during the day, most people, talk to a lot of people, and you forget. When I take notes, I don't take them on the back of the card, which was where most people would take notes. I take them on the front of the card. And the reason why I do that has to do with the fact that I lose cards. I get a lot of cards. I go to a lot of different places, and I never remember even where I met some of these people. So what I do at the end of each night is I will take the cards and I will line them up, right? And they all have the notes on the front of the card. And then I take out my secret weapon, my camera on my phone, and I take a picture of it. I now have all of the notes from the meeting. It's date stamped when I met the people. And I put stars on the people that I'm really planning on following up with as quickly as possible. And as simple as that may sound, it really winds up helping getting some of the clutter of networking out of the way. So just a couple of brief things to chat about in the beginning. All right. All right. So again, my goal today is to really talk about what's effective networking. Everybody knows networking is important. Everybody goes out and about to meet people, but the question is, do people really maximize the amount of time that they spend in the world of networking? Do they get the most that they possibly can out of it? And the last bullet here, in terms of what if there's one point to kind of get across is that networking is a learned skill. It's not like something that you have to go to school for 100 years and and worry about getting your A's, B's, and C's in a class. It just requires a lot of practice, right? And it's just feeling comfortable in a group of people that you don't know, right? Most people feel uncomfortable when they walk into a room where they don't know the people. The flip side is, I love walking into rooms of the people that I don't know. Where I'm not as good is when I go to social events with my wife, and you're in a room with people that you know for a long time. It's like, I've got nothing to say to them. I already know about them. And it's like, what am I going to talk about? But when you're in a room like this, everything that you learn from everybody is brand spanking new. It's like a really exciting thing. And networking is like a scavenger hunt. Because what you're doing is that you just never know what you're going to find. And you never know, and people talk about where should I go to network? the minute you wake up in the morning till the time that you go to sleep, you're networking. And if you're not sleeping, you should be somewhere meeting new people, because you just never know where that next person is that you're going to meet that's going to be really helpful to you. My background, I actually graduated from the university here. I was a math and computer science major. I started at GE Capital, first on the technology side, then technology management, sales management. Then, over the next 20-odd years, I ran 7 companies. They were either financial service companies or venture capital-backed companies. They were either technology service or financial service companies. I used to build them up, package them, and ultimately sell them. 4 of the companies were growth companies, 3 were turnarounds. It was a grueling world. Right? I enjoyed it. But after I'd sold my last company, after I had gotten 2 divorces, after I used to fly all over the place and I'd gotten married again, I said maybe I shouldn't keep traveling all over the place, because I used to have companies that were global and I used to fly all over the place. And I joined Bernstein as and today I'm one of the senior investment advisors at the firm. It's a really interesting investment management firm. It's actually the only major firm on Wall Street that actually directly manages money rather than acts as a middleman, outsourcing to third parties. On the bottom, I think one of the most important things is I always view myself as a sales-centric CEO, regardless of the role that I'm in. Sales is critically important, right? Sales/networking, they go hand in hand, right? And it's about building up a thick skin, right? Being able to handle rejection and not taking it personally. And it's about, and it's always about doing something new and bigger, right? And meeting people, and it's one of those things that's exciting. And again, it's not necessarily the thing that people are generally most comfortable about. When I was at GE, by the way, in the very beginning, there was I joined the GE, and what they had was a training program. It was called the ISMP program, Information Systems Management Training Program. And what GE was doing was building the next generation of IT managers. And you had a 2-year training program. One of the classes that I took to this day was probably one of the most important classes in my entire career, which was a public speaking class. I was scared to death to be in front of rooms. I mean, it was the last thing in the world that I ever wanted to do, was to be, the one standing in front. Now I love it. But that's one of the things that you got to just sort of overcome a lot of your fears. One of the things that I do, which I think is unique, but something that I encourage you to consider, is to come up with a very sophisticated numbering scheme as to how, when you meet people, how do you figure out who you're going to spend time with, right? Who do you want to be with? Well, I have a very complicated ranking system. I rank everybody a 1, 2, or a 3. 1s are the people I like. 2s are the people I think I can like. 3s are the people I don't like. Everybody starts out as a 2, and people are going to become 1 or 3s. I lop off all the 3s. I focus my time on 1s and 2s. It's a much nicer existence. You're spending time with people that you like. And at the same time, think of it this way. People that don't like you or you don't like them, they're generally not going to be very helpful to you. They're generally not going to be really good clients for you. And they're generally not going to refer people to you. So people say, but that's a really good person for me to know. There's probably somebody else that's equally good to know. And if you don't spend so much time trying to get that one, and you focus on somebody that's really meaningful to you, you'll be more successful. So that leads me to the second thing, which is I do things that are out of the box. If you expect it, I don't like doing it. Right? How many senior investment advisors at Bernstein teach networking skills? Why? I'm in a business where meeting people makes a big difference. Right? Well, I ran a lot of companies, and I teach professionals, accountants, lawyers, investment bankers, and others who are trying to build up their practice, how to build up their business, and one of the skills was networking skills. So I made this into a formal program, which I probably do 6 times a month in either audiences or within companies. It's a great way for me to meet new people that I never would have met any of you guys if we're not doing this. But everybody can do something different that you wouldn't normally think about. Networking is about making it easy for people to introduce you, right? If you want to be referred by somebody else, when it comes to, introducing, like, why would somebody want to work with me, right? Well, Bernstein has the best risk management on Wall Street, right? Risk matters. Well, if you give people short little bursts, people will remember it. If you give them a long discussion about what it is that you're all about, nobody's going to remember that, right? They may try to, but they probably are going to miss all the really good parts. So networking, part of it is making it easy for people to be able to introduce you. And then keep track of everything. What works, what doesn't work, right? Again, you're trying to maximize. If you go to a networking event, most networking events have a finite amount of time, an hour, 2 hours, right? So you have to maximize it. Time is your most valuable thing in a networking meeting. So you've got to really think ahead. What do you want to accomplish in that meeting? Not I'm going to the meeting to just meet people. I mean, that's like a wishy-washy, and it's not going to, even if you accomplish, I met 5 people. Okay, so that's great. Were they the right people? Did you accomplish anything right? So we'll talk about like setting goals. And then part of networking is about telling stories, but not necessarily work-related stories, because that's what people in a networking business environment expect. Talk about things that are personal to you, maybe, that are interesting to others, right? Like one of the things that I mentioned when I'm in a meeting is, could you believe that when Apple upgraded its operating system on the Apple Watch, that if you hold the button, too long, magically the police show up on your phone, right? It's a wonderful feature. It's like their SOS feature. But if you didn't know it, the first time it happened to me, when I happened to be leaning down at my house, when my watch was pressing, and the police literally were on my phone saying, how can we help you? What's the matter? I'm like, first of all, I didn't even know where it was coming from, let alone I looked at my phone. My phone wasn't doing anything. It was coming from my watch, right? But you tell people different things, and they remember it, right? All right. So, the state of networking right now.
So, sorry, was that a 911 call that you made?
911.
Nice.
Yes, the Greenwich police were actually on the phone, and you know what? With GPS and everything, they said that they knew my address. They knew, is everything okay? We know you're here. I was like, it was the most.
It wasn't me. It was my watch.
Yeah, and then
they're like, oh yeah, we get that all the time.
They said that because it was recently after Apple upgraded their system, and so I guess it was not the first time that this happened. But then I didn't know how to hang them up. I mean, really, I'm looking at my watch. It's like, how do I get rid of them? I told it, I'm so sorry. It's not an emergency. Yeah. So most people can actually get, better at it, and that's why I appreciate the fact that all of you guys took the time to come. It's something that I just think it's important. It's something that I think I can provide some added value to folks. Networking, by the way, is not going to a meeting like this. Yes, it is one of the places that you can do networking, but from the time you wake up in the morning till the time you go to sleep, every single person you talk to, you're networking. And therefore, there shouldn't be a pocket, a pair of pants, your car. Every single thing you own should have business cards in it, right? Everything. And 7 days a week, right? A couple months back, I was in Aruba. And my wife and I were at the happy hour bar, and we're having some drinks and talking. Obviously, I talk to people. Next thing I know, this woman from Kentucky said, at the end of our conversation, "How do I get in touch with you?" So my wife looks at me. You don't have your card, so I got a bathing suit on. I said, I have a little waterproof pouch that has business cards. Of course, I have cards, right? How could you not have cards? Wherever you go, you just never know where you're going to meet a person who might be helpful to you. I encourage, these are cheap. You print them up. Now, some people, by the way, in the room had laminated cards. I would discourage that. And the reason for that is if people are taking notes on a laminated card, you can't write on it, right? So, if you feel that our cards at Bernstein, they're thick, right? They feel meaty, right? I'd rather suggest you put the money into making it fatter instead of paying the money to have it laminated. You make the card, it should be something functional. All right, so What's effective networking? It's really pretty simple. There's three key things to think about and remember. The first is you go to a networking event and you should have a goal. What's the goal? Like, for instance, I go to a meeting and one of the things that I set a goal is I'm going to set up at least 3 meetings with people, new people that I don't already know, and maybe maybe 2 or 3 meetings with people that I do know, right? That's a goal of mine. I know if I've achieved it. I know if I haven't achieved it, and it's measurable, right? So I have a goal wherever you happen to be. Like Simon was talking about, he's looking for somebody to partner with him with his scissors. With the nail clippers, right? That was a goal, right? So whatever that goal may be, you should have a specific goal, measurable, so you know if the night was a success or not a success. It's all about meeting people, right? And meeting the right people. It's not just meeting people, or it's meeting people who can actually help you get to the right people. And it's about being able to communicate to those people, again, making it easy for people to be able to introduce you. Because often you're not meeting people that are going to be the direct helper. It's maybe the next one, right? So, or maybe the next one. But again, you got to make it easy. And the last one, which people do a lousy job of, which is something that I would encourage you to do a really good job of, is following up. Now, what's following up? Now, in today's world, an email is a follow-up or a call is a follow-up, right? People use Facebook and stuff. I don't. Maybe they post something. Who knows? But how do you follow up so that you're going to be more effective? Most people, they'll go to a meeting like this and they'll say, "Wow, I got a couple of cards. Let me reach out to boom, 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 boom." And they'll say, "I met you at, the IACT networking presentation. It'd be, we talked about getting together. It would be great if we, if we got together." Okay. Now, it's not that it's that big an audience, but there's 10 people. You may or may not remember who that person is. So when you get that email, so I wrote notes on all the people that I met, right? So as an example, so Jim was talking about, he was in transition. He was a film grip, right? And now he's doing real estate, right? When I was talking to Gene, he's going to disrupt philanthropy, right? But key things. So when you're following up with somebody, if you can personalize the follow-up to actually show that you are listening to the conversation, your chances when you send an email to somebody to say, "Let's get together," are going to be so much higher than if somebody just says, "Hey, let's get together." It's like, think of how much, it's almost like junk mail, right? You can make it stand out by showing that you actually paid attention to the other person. How many times do you think it takes to follow up with somebody before you actually get through? Anybody have an idea?
3.
I've got 3 down here. We can make this interactive. Anybody else have a number?
Sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's forever.
That's getting closer.
I heard the magic number 7.
And there's a 7. The right answer is, there is no right answer. It's until you actually get through to the other person. If it's a person who you want to follow up with, until the other person cries uncle and says, "Kiss off, I've had enough, go away," you keep following up. How much time does it take to shoot an email and build a story? And don't give people too much information, but you keep building on it. Right? Sometimes, and people will generally, more often than not, they'll say, "I was so busy when you first sent me the email, I'm so sorry I didn't get back to you. Yeah, let's get together." Because you've shown them that you're actually persistent in a professional, in a polite way, and where you're trying to convey incremental value each time you reach out to them. As I pointed out, networking occurs everywhere. You don't turn it on and turn it off. If you're not sleeping, you're networking, right? So it's the opposite. The opposite of sleeping is networking. And wherever you happen to be, you want to make it as easy for people to reach you. Now, one of the creative things that I help a lot of people that are in transition. I do a lot of events with people, these workshops, and I have lots of one-on-one meetings. And one of the things that I suggest to many people is, again, you're trying to make it easy for people to remember, stand out a little bit. I'm not a big believer in a lot of the professional in transition type companies, only because they do make people, help people. It's not to say I don't encourage people to use them, but I think they're good to help people kind of get more motivated to, if you haven't been looking for a position in quite a while, they kind of help repackage you into that. But the problem is they package everybody to look the same. So you have a professional looking resume, right? You have a professional looking cover letter. But when you're applying for a position and your resume or your cover letter looks the same as everybody else's, how does a person really distinguish? I do a lot of, one of the groups that I spend a lot of time with, for those of you under ACG, Association of Corporate Growth, Matt Budd is a friend of mine. He's on the board. He runs an organization called FANG, Financial Executives Networking Group. And I do a lot of this kind of coaching for his organization. Well, in the beginning, everybody does their introduction. Everybody sounds the same. I'm a controller, I'm a CFO, and I did this. There's not enough of a differentiation. If you take a look at people's resume, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. If other people can describe themselves similarly, you're not unique enough where you're going to stand out in the pile. So you got to be different. People are afraid to be different because they don't want to piss somebody off by being out of the box. But I'd rather piss somebody off and increase my odds of being noticed. Where if you think of 100 people applying to one job, and a couple of them are going to get their resume pulled out, your odds of success are so low. You might as well increase your odds to 15 or 20% by doing something different. And a lot other people just think, maybe you're an idiot or whatever. Let's take the hit on the ones that you may lose over here, but you've increased your odds over here. My suggestion. Networking is about the other person. Most people go to a networking event and they're so fixated on telling their story, they forget to ask the other person about their story. They forget to start interacting with the other person. And I will tell you, in the world of networking, if you speak first, you lost. If you speak the longest, you lost. If you speak first, right? So what I always do, and by the way, it's not a contest, but I'll share with you a little secret, is when I met, I think I spent to almost everybody, I'm sorry, but you showed in a little bit late, I didn't get that brief little introduction, but I'll always say, hi, I'm Scott Nevins. I'll have the other person, say their name, and then I'll say, and what is it that you do? I always ask that question first, for a couple of reasons. Number one, I'd like to know a little bit about you. Number two, I know until you've said a little bit about you, you're not going to listen to me. Because on your mind is what you're here to talk about. You're not here to listen to me. You are here to say your own little spiel. So I let people talk first. I then, when I respond with what I do, I try to tailor it to what you told me. But I also know you're more receptive to listening to what I told you. Now, most people, though, when they're speaking to each other, aren't playing my role in that one, and they start speaking first, and then they give a really long response to what it is that what their spiel is. How in the world is the other person really going to remember most of that? And it's not that what people are saying isn't interesting, but they haven't earned, which is really an important word, they have not earned the right to give me that big spiel, or to give the other person that big spiel. You want to have short information that you're presenting. You want to quickly turn it around to the other person. Can you tell me a little bit about them? Because once the person has actually, if they're up here because they're so fixated on talking, if I can get you down to here because I know I let you speak a little bit, you're going to be much more receptive to listening to what I do. Which is, again, said the other way, if you want to be successful, let the other person talk, get off their chest, what it is that they want up to a point. You want to keep it short, and then you turn it around. It's really important, and it will, in fact, hi. Come on in. Here, we'll give you these guys. So, thank you for coming. By the way. Nice meeting. Okay. Networking. Don't be aggressive. Don't be overly intense when you're talking about what it is that you're doing. People get nervous and stop listening. Smile. Be engaging. People will listen. Right? If you're so intense on what you're doing, right, you're going to scare the hell out of the other person. Right? You just scare them to the point where they turn off and they can't wait to leave the conversation. You want to be engaging. You want to get them, you want people hang out with people that they like and they're willing to listen to people that they like. There's a big difference between being really energetic and passionate and being aggressive. All right? It's a fine line, but it's important not to cross it. Networking is a numbers game. The more people you meet, the more likely you're going to wind up meeting good people. All right? And you can never have too many people in your network. And you always have to keep refreshing your network. So it's not like, well, I met 100 people, I put them all into LinkedIn, and I now have a network. No. You have to keep re-engaging with your network, and you have to keep bringing in new people into your network. It's not like a product that you build, you finish, and you're done. It's a evolving kind of a thing. You want to be unselfish. Networking is about helping the other person. The more you help the other person, the more likely it is that they're going to help you. Right? It's not magic. Right? The more helpful you are, the more likely the other person is going to be helpful. So when I talk to people, I say, tell me a little bit about yourself, and then I'll say, well, how can I be of help to you? Right? What can I do for you? Before I ever get down to what I'm looking for, because then you'll notice the other person after they've gone through, they'll say, and how can I be helpful to you? Now, the difference is that their guard is so low at that point because they've actually gotten off their chest what they wanted to talk about. They've got you focused on how to be helpful to them. Of course they're going to now they're focused on you, which is exactly where you wanted it, right? Now, I do encourage you to follow through on the things that you said that you were going to do, because that will build up the relationship with the other person. But you got them at the point now where they're ready to listen, which is great. Again, this one is like, where do people go? People always say, well, where should I go for this? You never know. I think you go to as many places as you can. Where don't I go? All right? I don't go to places where there's a lot of other folks from other investment firms. Despite the fact that people would say, but that's where you should be going because that's where you're going to meet people no, if they're all there, why in the world am I going to go there? Right? Now, I probably could figure out a way to stand out there, but why am I going to go out of my way? I go to places where there aren't anybody else like me, right? And people say, but you may not know the subject, you may not know the topic, you may not know the people. By the way, those are all, in my mind, great things. I don't want to know the people. If I knew all the people, I'm not meeting new people, right? So you go really, truly, wherever, and the best way I come up with describing it is it's sort of like a scavenger hunt. I mean, you just never know what you're going to find. And it's always exciting every time you do it. Your network is part of your net worth, like your value. What are you bringing to the table? One of the reasons why I'm really very successful in what I do is I built up a really large network of professionals that I know. And so if somebody comes to me, chances are I'm going to be able to be helpful to them, whether it's in what I do in my day job or not. People generally want to hang out with me because I can generally be helpful. That's the way you want to be thought of in your circle. As you're building a, you want to be the person that other people want to meet. When I go to a networking environment where people do, there's some people that do know me as well, and I'm talking to somebody and somebody new comes up as an example, the person I'm talking with will almost always say, and this is somebody you really want to know, right? And they'll give a little, well, what better introduction is if the other person's doing the introduction for you? I mean, that's terrific. But so again, part of networking is, and it's not just in your core competency, it's, as many different areas as you can possibly cover and remember. Right? It's a good thing. All right. This is one of the things that I think is so really very important. Is in the world of networking, you are the product. You are meeting other people. Right? Your brand of who you are has to stand out. So the simple way of me describing this is that, for instance, when I see lots of people's resumes, when people are in transition, and they'll describe themselves, I did this at GE, I did this at this one, I did this. A lot of other people could describe themselves like that. It's not like you didn't tell me anything new or unique about you. Or you go to a networking event and they'll say, well, I'm an accountant, I'm a lawyer, I work with high net worth individuals, okay, if I'm an advisor. But what if you say I focus on risk management, which in today's world, what could be more important to focus on, right? You remember, things like North Korea, the market is here, right? You want to catch whatever it is. You want to catch things with people that are different and unique. That you're going to really, try to engage people. You want people to think about you differently. This is why I talk about, you want to make it so that other people, when they describe you, can say, wow, this is somebody who's boom, bada boom, bada boom, just different, stands out of the crowd. If they're like anybody else, like, real estate, well, what makes you were describing you were in the sewer, helping one of your clients because you were in the construction business. Well, that's different. How many people, most people, when you think of real estate, it's a little old lady who's sitting in a car driving from one place to another, right? That's different, right? So if nothing else, that as an example, it causes somebody like me who's standing in front of a room where, for you to be able to meet other people, wow, that was different, right? And you were talking about financial, doing some planning work with small businesses. That's different, right? And disrupting the philanthropic world. And he's got this cool little, the dog thing that runs on cables that does, security. Replacing the idea of building a real wall with a. But that's different, right? So notice what I'm doing is, it's important that you remember things about the other person when you're talking with them too, so that you can actually show them that you're paying attention to it.
So Scott, could you say a few words about what to do when you're shy?
Yes. Remember that last bullet that I put on the first slide, which was practice, right? You can't be shy in networking. That doesn't mean you aren't a shy person. They're separate, right? It's sort of like, when you say to, a kid, you screwed up. It's not that I hate you as a kid. It's you messed up, right? Did you focus? So what I suggest to people, and I do actually a lot with students as well, when I'm doing this, and people, they're very uncomfortable. You just look in the paper, look at all the different places where there may be, different events going on. And literally, you just go to these events in places, quite honestly, that are likely not be as helpful to you. Who cares? And you practice. And you walk up and to people. So in advance, I'll just say, how do you meet people when you go to an event? So, hey, Doug, you walk up to people and you say, wow, that's Doug Lyon. Wow. And you introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Doug Lyon. Your name is so-and-so. What do? And you just keep practicing and practicing and practicing. Remember, in the beginning, I told you I was scared to death to do public speaking. In the beginning, it wasn't. I was terrible. Truly, I was really bad at it too. So hopefully you think I've gotten better over the years. But I was scared to death of it. And the only way to accomplish that was I had to keep doing it over and over and over again. Now, public speaking, standing in front of a room, you don't always get that opportunity. Networking on a one-on-one basis, everywhere you go. And so literally you've got to, it's all about just practicing and getting to the point. And it's because part of networking is sales. Remember, you're selling yourself. And generally speaking, people are not good in sales because they're afraid of rejection. And or they're afraid to figure out how to get started. So if you sort of practice, if you sort of practice something, simply saying that, hi, I'm Scott Nevins, and your name is, and can you tell me a little bit about you? And then you go to the next person and the next person. So in advance, if you have your little tiny script to get started, and what's the worst thing that could possibly happen when you're speaking with somebody? The conversation doesn't go well. So what? Go to the next person and practice again. It's like in sales. You never go to the person, if you're trying to sell something, you never go to the person you really care about in the beginning to sell first. You're building up to that one. You're trying to practice, handle all the objections, trying to build up your repertoire of how to deal with it. Same thing in networking. And by the way, in the beginning it's scary, and in the beginning you may not be really very good at it, but it's literally it's practice.
So we went around the room today and everybody introduced themselves, but when you're at the AIF meeting, they never do that, do they?
Very rarely, only when we have extra time. Because the purpose of AIF, the Angel Investor Forum, is not for the members to keep reintroducing themselves, because every member paid $1,200. They're there to actually hear the companies that are presenting, and so occasionally we will do that when we feel like we've gotten a bunch of new members in, but it is not a normal kind of a thing that group does, no. And most, some groups like this do, which is great, but, the objective of this group is different, right? I mean, the objective of this group is networking. The objective of AIF is finding companies that the members are interested in investing in. So that's so that's kind of the,
Unless Manny is leading the meeting, MIT Enterprise Forum doesn't do it either.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Because the room, and his kind of meetings too, Manny's meetings are very large. And again, people in that case, they didn't pay to go to the meeting to listen to everybody else's introduction. Now me, I care about the room. So I personally would like that part. When I go to a meeting and again, when people, to me, that's what, I'm here generally for the audience, right? I go to lots of events. I could care less about generally the presentation. I'm there to meet the people. When the meeting starts, where's the last place you want to go? Like in a general networking, not an AIF meeting, but a general networking meeting where there's like a speaker at some point, people start sitting down. The last place you want to do is sit. Because now, in the back of the room are the people that are really there to network. Those are the ones you want to hang with. All right. You had a question?
Well, just a plug. Toastmasters, if anybody doesn't know and needs help public speaking, it's a wonderful organization.
There you go. So it's a formal way of practicing.
Have you ever considered that the, at least the American educational system, is adverse to teaching people to speak independently, in that from kindergarten on up, there's always a superior person standing in the room, the teacher. It's a one-way communication, and typically if there is a question, there may be, or usually is, some error in the question. It's embedded in the idea. You have to ask a question because you don't know something.
Right.
And so there's a bit of a...
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Well, we think foreign languages, right? I could write French by the time I was done with school. If you ask me to speak a word of it, I can listen when I go to places. If somebody talks, I can figure it out. But I can't speak a word of it. Right? So, yeah, absolutely. I think that there's, I mean, I don't think our schools. By the way, I'm very critical of what goes on in universities, in the business schools, as well, because networking and sales, to me, should be an integral part of the curriculum. It's not. It just isn't, and I think it's shameful. I think in today's world, I think those are skills that people should walk away from their college education with. And it's here at Fairfield. It's at most schools. I mean, it's not like one of the rare schools. By the way, my younger son, this coming year is going to be going to college, and so I did like the college thing. And UMass up in Amherst, he wanted to be in the sports management program. That's what he was interested in. We were going to a bunch of places. Out of about a dozen schools that we visited, it was the only school that we went to that the kids, the professors, everybody was obsessed with the world of networking. And, because that's what it's going to take. In order to differentiate yourself, it's going to be who you know. And it's incredibly free with all the alumni that are in there to get the kids involved. And every kid that we talk to, it's all about the network. To me, it was a little intimidating to my kid. But to me, I'm like, wow, that's what I want my kid to walk away with, from an education standpoint. Because that's what's going to make somebody successful in a crowded space. Right? So, again, going back to the point where Doug was just saying, well, how do you get started? Well, the first thing is you got to practice your initial script. And you got to be comfortable with it. And so in the beginning, maybe you record it, right? Remember, not only do you have a camera on your phone, you got a recorder on your phone. You record it. See how you sound. See if you're going to be the one who's going to want to walk away from listening to yourself. Right? Well, in the beginning, you probably will. By the end, hopefully you won't. Hopefully you'll say, wow, that's a person I really want to meet. But you got to have a short, crispy way, right? As an example, when I meet people, right, and I do my introduction, if I've heard a person and it's not probably a person who I'm going to wind up spending a lot of time with, now my question is going to be, how am I polite in responding, but how do I cut my conversation as short as possible and now move on to the next person, right? Because again, remember, you've got a certain window of doing networking, and you want to you're doing the other person a favor as well by leaving, the conversation, because you've concluded that it's not going to be a good fit for the two of you anyhow, and if the other person may be warm and fuzzy, wants to keep talking to you, but you've concluded it's not going to work. Remember, it's got to work for both of you in order for there to be chemistry to be able to make it work. You might as well leave. So, I'll tell somebody, and they say, what do you do? Hey, I'm one of the senior investment advisors at Bernstein. And then I'll go on, to maybe ask one or two questions, and I'll say, wow, it's really great meeting you. Let me give you one of my cards, and I move on. But if it's somebody who, I've met, who, I want to do not the 5-second introduction, but a little bit more, I'll say, I'm Scott Nevins. I'm one of the senior advisors at Bernstein. I'm not sure if you're aware who Bernstein is, but it's one of the largest firms on Wall Street, managing assets, about $500 billion. It's the only major firm on Wall Street that actually manages money, doesn't act as a middleman, outsourcing the money to third parties. There's only one layer of fees. Only firm that does active integrated risk management, and we tax manage every trade that we do for our clients. Right? Well, I've given people just a couple of short bullets, and that's enough. Because generally speaking, somebody will ask me afterwards, wow, what you just described sounds different. It's right? Because unlike firms like Merrill Lynch or UBS or Morgan Stanley, none of those firms do it the way that Bernstein does it. So odds are that the chances are somebody's going to ask. But that's what you want to get your conversation into is short, don't overwhelm the other person, right? Don't monopolize the conversation. Don't make it too long. But that's important. Short and crisp, and practice it a lot. If you go to an organization and you're not, you're new to it, what's the easiest way, going back to Doug's question, if you're nervous, you walk up to each person and say, hi, I'm new to this group. I'm Doug Lang. Tell me a little bit about this group. Everybody's going to engage you because, wow, you're new, which means I must know more than you. I'm going to welcome you to this group. And what do you do to the next person when you walk to, I'm new? Because they don't know you just talked to the person before you just said I'm new. Right? You could be new the whole night, and you could be new the next time you come. Right? That could be your way of introducing yourself. The remembering, short stories. Again, short stories, so that people remember. Another one that I sometimes use is, hey, they'll say, well, where do you live? I live in Greenwich, but I have a second home up in Rhode Island. It's a funny story about my Rhode Island house because I was actually on my way to Iceland, and 4 days before the trip, there was a volcano that erupted, and so we bailed out of that trip. We tried to fly to the west coast of Canada, but the airport in Chicago was closed because of thunderstorms the last week of August. 2 days later, we came back home, right? Now we figured we'd go drive somewhere. And everything Labor Day week 3 years ago was booked up. That was near the water. We happened to find a little inn in Narragansett, Rhode Island. We go up there. We're having a grand old time. It was a rainy day one day. We figured, we'll go look at houses as an activity. We looked at one house and we bought it. Next thing, how many people, it's a different kind of a story. By the way, I compounded it because I sold that house and I bought another house now because I really like it there. But that's different. How many people were on their way to Iceland, got stuck in Chicago, wound up in Indiana, and bought a house in Narragansett, Rhode Island? It doesn't happen too often. Everybody has unique stories, right? Again, as I shared with you, everybody likes to talk about themselves. Remember, it's all about you, not about me. Although I'm doing this presentation, so I get to do a lot of the talking today. But at the same time, in the world of networking, you want the other person to be doing a lot of talking. Realize if the other person does a lot of the talking, you're actually going to think the conversation went really well. Because people like to hear themselves speak. Right? They like to hear them speaking more than they like to hear you speaking. The more they're talking, the better they think the conversation went. Go figure. So that's why you want to just have short bullets for when you're going to insert your information into the conversation, because they think the conversation went well, and they heard a couple of your key bullets. Whoa, the conversation must have gone well, and now they learned what's important. So most people go to a networking event, trying to figure out, what's in it for me. Nah, it's like, what's in it for you? If you guys walk away feeling good, from a presentation like this, or if we're having a conversation, that's a good outcome. That really is a good outcome. And so it's not about me, it's about you. And when it's the reverse way, and we're talking, it's about me, it's the opposite. But you want to make it about the other person and be different, be unexpected. Because if you're like everybody else, you got 50 people you're going to talk to in a networking event. How are you going to remember everybody? You got to be different. One of the reasons, by the way, where I use my hands a lot, aside from the fact that I can't just keep them still, is when I speak, or when anybody is speaking, if you're very serious and you're not showing any animation, you're not going to listen to me. You're going to listen like 20 seconds plus or minus, and then you're going to turn off. But every time I start moving and I move around and I do this, it's sort of like resetting the clock. It's sort of like, when a client calls up and says, I've got to, you don't have the answer right at that moment. My associates generally, the new ones will be, they won't get back to the person until they actually have the answer. I teach them the craziest thing in the world. If you don't have the answer, you get back to them to simply say, I'm still working on it. It resets the clock, right? Because if you're not getting back, even though it's this, you still don't have the answer, you want to reset the clock because people's anxiety grows as the time goes by. Entering a room. All right. So first of all, when you go to an event where there's networking, the event starts at 6 o'clock. You don't show up at 6 o'clock. You don't show up at 6:15. You show up at 5:45. You don't show up late to a networking event. People say, but, I'm not being judged on this networking event. Yeah, but if you self-judge yourself, the best networking in a networking event occurs before the event really starts and after the event technically is really over, right? The middle, it's crowded. There's a lot of stuff going on. You're moving from person to person. The people that are there early are generally the ones that are really there to really network. The people that are there late are there for two reasons. Generally, they got no other place to go, avoid those people. The ones that are just there to have the drinks, avoid those people. The ones that are hanging out, that are actually there, hey, same as you. I haven't met everybody that I possibly could meet. Those are good people to meet. Come early, stay late, right? So if the networking is 6 to 8, it's 5:30, 5:45 to 8:15, 8:30, right? Where do you put your name tag on? This is where people generally get this one wrong. All right, if you're wearing a name tag, most guys will put their name tag right where their pocket is or on their left side. It is the
Right.
I know, because you've been to one of my things before. Which I noticed, which is really good. If you put it on the left side, it's not a good place to put it. Your pocket was designed for a handkerchief. It was not designed for a name tag. Why? Because when you shake hands with somebody, notice that when you shake hands, you generally step in with your right hand, because that's how people shake. Well, you can't see my name. I can see Doug's name because Doug put it on the correct side, the right side. Name tags belong on the right side, not the left side. Really important. A networking newbie puts it on the left side. If you're really into networking, you stick it on the right side. Because the idea of the name tag isn't simply because somebody gave you the name tag to wear. It's you were given it with the purpose that people will remember who you are. If they can't see it, remember now when you're speaking to somebody, generally speaking, especially if it's in the middle of a networking thing, you can hardly hear the other person. So you probably didn't really hear the name of the person. Which means you're talking to a person that you can't really remember the name of the person. So you keep thinking about, what's the name of that person? And you're not really thinking about the conversation as much as you should. And at the end of the conversation, you don't really remember who you spoke to. You want to see the name of the person, right? You want to be the person that the other people remember, right? So just as a suggestion, put it on the right side, not the left side. Load up your pockets. The silliest thing that people can do when they go to a networking environment is that I'm out of business cards, or I forgot my business cards. My comment to them is, why go? If you're there to be met, to meet people, right, and you're there for people to meet you, bring your business cards. You should always have an oversupply. My car's got 1,000 extra business cards in it, because my pockets sometimes run low, and I may not be at my house, or my office to get them. So load up everywhere you are with lots and lots of business cards. Oh, and on the transition, one of the things that I suggest to people is you actually put your resume laminated on it, like that little card that I've given you, which is it's front and back. It's really a handout for the presentation. But I encourage people, and it actually works, to put an abridged version of your resume, if you're looking for a job, on that card. Why not? How many people, when you go to a place, when they say, hey, why don't you send me your resume, you give them your resume, but paper, nobody really likes big sheets of paper. But you give them a card like that? How many times does that happen? Not that often. You stand out. Very creative. It works. Now, going to Doug's question now, I'm in a networking environment. How do I meet new people? All right. Do you mind if I use you as a guinea pig since you're up here? Okay. So, yeah, why not? So,
I'm an engineer, I look at my shoes.
yeah, right. Right.
Actually, I'm an extroverted engineer, I look at his shoes.
So-
Your shoes are nice.
So now, if he and I are talking,
Yeah.
right, and somebody wants to enter the conversation, if he and I are talking and theoretically looking at each other,
Oh, okay.
yes, the person that's over here who wants to get into our conversation, their goal is to catch one of our two eyes.
Oh, let's ignore him.
Right? So if we decide that we want to talk and we don't want the other person to be involved in the conversation, the last thing you want to do is have eye contact. Anybody drive a car? Anybody go to toll booths. I know that most of them are getting yanked out these days, but in the old days there were toll booths. And anybody doesn't like being cut off. What's the last thing to do when you're in traffic? Is to make eye contact with the car next to you, because the minute that person who's looking at you to say, "Can I cut in front of you?" The minute you have eye contact, they're going to cut in front of you, right? What do you do to avoid that? You don't look. That's why they invented peripheral vision. If you don't look at them, they can't cut you off, right? Same thing in networking. If I don't want anybody to enter a conversation, I'm just going to look. But if I want to get into a conversation, most people, by the way, don't know the rules of not looking. Right? So there may be two people like here talking. One of them sees that somebody's standing here, me, and when it's me, and one of them makes eye contact, what do? I stick out my hand and I say, "Hi, Doug. I'm Scott Nevins." Why? Because I see his name tag. And I introduce myself. But what do you then do? You go over here and you introduce yourself to the other person as quickly as you possibly can, because what you want to do is you don't want to alienate because they might have been speaking. You want to introduce yourself to both of those people, and whoosh, you're in there. So the secret weapons of networking are eye contact and handshakes.
Also, I introduce others. I think that's important. So I'll say, "Scott, do you know Bill?" And do you know? Right. So I think that just being the facilitator is sort of important.
Absolutely. And one of the things, though, but this is your environment, you're trying to do that.
Yeah.
But what you've just described is one of the best ways to exit a conversation as well. Because now I'm talking with Doug, and I'm done. Doug and I finished. We had a really good conversation. And I'll say, "Doug, here's one of my cards, right? I'll give you one of my cards. I'll say, "Do you have one of your cards?"
No,
Why? Because
cards.
people, here,
I
it's
have
okay.
cards, just
You had a whole box of them over there.
they're over.
But, people recognize that the exchanging of cards is technically, you're getting closer to the end of the conversation. And now, by the way, one of the things that people generally don't do, they'll say, "And we should follow up." Now, if it is actually somebody that you want to follow up with, and they'll say, "Why don't you shoot me an email with some dates that work?" Email exchanges and following up, if you remember, could take forever, even if the person wants to talk to you. What do? I'll say, "It's great meeting you. Doug, here's one of my cards. Notice that he did it the right way.
Yeah.
When you hand cards, part of
I'm not going to
exchanging
put
cards."
this away. I'm going to look at it.
That's exactly right. You want to look at the card. You want to show respect, right? Don't just take the card, stick it in your pocket, and call it a day. You want to look at it. And then what I'll do is I will take out my calendar. Most everybody these days walks around with their calendar on their phone,
Yeah,
right?
like this.
right? Not everybody, but most people. He has like a,
Hi, Siri.
yeah,
She doesn't talk to me.
he's got an old phone. But most people in the modern age, have their calendar on here. And if you can set up the meeting while you're together, because now I'll say, what does next week look like for you? Now, he's almost at a point where, remember, I'm in control of the process here. He's almost at the point where he can't say, he goes like, I guess I better take a look at my phone and my calendar, right? Versus, the whole email exchange and stuff like that. So setting up a meeting at the time is also a really good thing. Now, if you want to get rid of Doug, after we're now done, is you got a couple of things. Now, the conversation went well. Maybe we set up a meeting. In that case, maybe we do. I'll say, have a great time, whoosh. But maybe he just doesn't get it that the conversation is over. Okay? Maybe he's really enjoying speaking with me. The idea, you remember, if you meet one good person in an event, maybe you'll meet 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. So you always want to, it's a numbers game. Go out and meet more people. So now I got to figure out how do we get rid of Doug. All right? So there's a couple of ways to do it. One of them is exactly what you said, which was, hey, you let the other person into the conversation, introduce them, and say adios, right? Excuse me, I'm going to go get myself, a cup of coffee or whatever. But now you got the other person talking to the other one. You're out of there. If there's no person handy, to be able to do that, and the person still's not getting it, I'll look across the room, and I'll say, wow, a person that I was just trying to meet just came in, just came in. It's
You
really
don't want
good.
to talk to me anymore.
It's time. And I'll just say, but you want to pick far away from you. If you're pointing, pick, and it doesn't. There should be people in that general vicinity. Right? Don't go pointing over there in the corner. But it's not just meeting people, and it's not just spending time with people. It's also maximizing the amount of time that you're spending with them, and then exiting as nicely as you possibly can.
As a related issue, if you have an ongoing conversation with Doug and you're in the middle of something and you want to finish it and there's an intrusive third party, what do you do with him?
Well, one of two. I mean, basically, what I'll do generally is to say, "Excuse, we'd love to talk to you, but we're still speaking. We're still in the middle of a conversation. We'd love to speak with you in a little bit. What's the other person going to do? They'll walk away. I mean, it's unlikely that same person will say, "Well, I don't really give a damn. You guys were in the middle of a conversation." Right? People feel awkward saying that because they don't want to piss the other person away off who just came by. But it's like, hey, you're there to network. Now, the flip side is that maybe you're at a point you guys have been spending a fair amount of time. You shouldn't have long conversations at a networking event, even if it's somebody who you really think is valuable. You should be setting up a follow-up meeting with them outside of it. You should make sure, because sometimes people have a conversation and then somebody may interrupt, and then the other person may not want to be, you may be more engaged in the conversation than the other person is, and now all of a sudden you're messed up, in terms of you didn't get to finish. So when you get to a certain point, you want to get the cards, you want to set up the meeting. If there's a little extra time to spend, that's fine, but quite often people will be chatting, and all of a sudden somebody will come in, interrupt the conversation, and all of a sudden, the exchange wasn't handled well, and you never get to finish, and you may or may not get the card, and all of a sudden, so bad things happen. I think we talked all about that. We talked about, again, remember one of the comments that I mentioned in the beginning, write notes on the cards. Write them on the front, and the reason for that, again, is because you're going to take pictures of these cards when you leave the event. Most people have an electronic, system of being able to enter names as well. But the problem is, many people will take the cards, enter information into their electronic, system that they're using. They may even type some of the notes that they may have had that they may have even written, let's say, on the back of the card or what have you. But it's really difficult, I find, anyhow, because I'm a visual person. Everybody's different. But when everything is in the system, I find it more difficult until a person really has become part of my normal, interaction with them. I like having the cards. I constantly am looking back at the last several weeks of my cards. I mean, if you look at my phone, I got a gazillion pictures of cards, and not one card at a time. That will kill you. I'm talking about, put, a dozen or more cards, here. And that's why it's important. And remember, because, you can expand these things so you can actually see what you wrote on it. But if you wrote the notes on the front of the card, the notes are there with the name of the people. If you start writing the notes in the back of the card, it becomes a little bit more of a pain in the neck to take the pictures of, because now the question is relating the front and the back of the card to the same person. So, just a suggestion. And again, if you're doing your cards, don't laminate your cards. Some people have laminated cards. Again, laminated cards are very difficult to write on. So you may think that they look nicer, but the purpose, get heavier cardstock and make it so that it's writable. So that, because the real purpose of this is for people to be able to remember you. So that's the notes, taking the pictures. You're the only one who's accountable, right? So how did it go? Well, it's not like somebody else is judging you. Either you were successful or you weren't successful. You set a set of goals. You either hit them or you didn't hit them. I'm not a big believer in setting the goals and not hitting them, which means that, maybe you hit your goal, which was setting up 2 meetings, 3 meetings, whatever it is, meeting a certain contact. Maybe you did it in the first 10 minutes of the meeting. Terrific. Now go for another one. It's okay to get bonus points. Or maybe you're there, it's getting closer to the end of the meeting, you haven't yet reached it. Well, don't leave, right? You just stay there. I mean, you went there for a purpose. Unless you're just going there to go get if they got drinks and hors d'oeuvres and stuff, and you're just going there to eat. Right? Short of that, you should be staying there to get to accomplish whatever it was that you were trying to accomplish in the first place. And again, on the bottom one is how many times does it take to follow up? You just keep following up until the other person finally cries uncle and acknowledges you. Come up with several reasons why somebody really should want to be with you, should want to meet with you. I mean, I said 20 up here, but it doesn't have to be 20 on the nose. It could be, why should somebody help you? What is it that you're looking for? Keeping it simple. Remember, come up with your own numbering scheme. Mine is the simple one: 1, 2s, and 3s, right? Everybody's a 2, and you either become a 1 or a 3, and I cross off the 3s. Why do I do that? Because there's just too many people in this world, and you can fight as much as you want, but at the end of the day, if this doesn't work, go over here. And it's part of sales, though, right? You got to build up. This is going back to Doug's point. If I'm nervous, you got to build up a thick skin. It's nothing more than if you're doing a sport. I play tennis as an example. Until you have the calluses, you're ripping your hands to shreds, right? Well, you just have to keep doing it until you build up your calluses. In the world of networking, in the world of sales, it's the other person rejects you. So what? What's the worst that's going to happen? You go to the next person, because that's the fun part about networking. Come up with when you're sending your thank you notes or sending your follow-ups. Again, that's why it's so important to take notes, because now you can make them personalized. And again, I'm not telling it doesn't have to be like a novel. All it's going to have is just a couple of short little reminders to say. For instance, there was a person that I met here at one of Doug had me here. I don't know, it was like a couple months back, and somebody that I was talking with had commented on my pen when we were speaking. So the way that she emailed me to say let's get together. Hey, I'm the one who was talking to you about your pen. There wasn't anybody else in the room talking about the pen. This woman, she's an accountant in Fairfield.
Is it a blank blank?
It is. Yeah. But it was it was something that she picked up, right? I mean, not too many people walk around and say, "Oh, I like your pen," right? But that she did, and that was like one of the simple things to just say, "Hey," as a way to be remembered. All right. So again, be humble, not aggressive. You may have great things that you want to tell the other person, but if you're too forceful, it just doesn't work, right? And you gotta smile, and you gotta make the other person want to hear the information. Again, what makes you unique? That's really important, and then you're the one that's accountable, and nobody else, because again. And you go to as many different places as you possibly can go, and you just never know who you're going to meet that's going to be useful. So I'm at the end with 2 things. 1, if people have questions, and 2, I never do these things without also having a nice little raffle. So today's raffle is a $50 gift card to Amazon. So a lot of times I bring Harry and David baskets, but I did that here the last time I was here. It's such a schlep from where you park the car that in places that I know that it's longer, I've now switched to something really light and easy, like a gift card is much easier. So, any questions, any comments, any thoughts?
This is good from a standpoint of when you're meeting people. What I've been working on is when you don't get to events, and I want to network with somebody. If I read an article on somebody and they're in Pennsylvania, this is a key person. This person was the author of an article. I want to connect with that person. So what I've been doing is I take that article, I make a copy of it, and then I go online, I try to get their mailing address, and then I make a notation on that article, what I highlight, why I thought they were important. And then that's when you're trying to connect with somebody you can meet in person.
Right.
And these are could be very, very influential people. It's the same thing if I'm a startup founder and I want to connect with certain VCs, all right? Find a partner, find the right person within the organization, do some homework, do some research on the people, and then we show them that you're thinking, you're caring about them.
Absolutely.
But when you don't, I'm in a situation where I'm not really seeing a lot of people right now face to face. People I'm networking with are the ones that I can't.
Yeah, but it's still a numbers game, and what you're doing
It is.
again is you're trying to make it more personalized. And then the flip side is that you probably got a really low probability of people initially getting back to you, but that shouldn't stop you. It should simply say you should just if it's somebody you really care about and you're sending them the thing, how often do you do it? do it.
I use, if I can just put one example, there's one guy I really wanted to meet, and he had an article in the newspaper. I made a copy. I actually wrote handwritten notes, the parts that I highlighted because we had a common interest. I found out where his business mailing address. I sent it to him. Then I get a response. And in my letter, I said, "It would be nice. Maybe I can get together. Let's buy a cup of coffee." So I tried for that get together.
Yeah.
Right, just by taking the time to show this person that I was interested in them.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Did it work?
An article. So I get a response back by email, and it said, "Gene," I said, "I appreciate what you sent, but due to business engagements and family obligations and upcoming travel, I won't be able to meet with you for a long time." Right? And I'm like, whoa, right? That was like a slap in the face. I spent an hour just preparing my notes and sending them. So I haven't given up. I've sent 3 other articles, all right? And I'm waiting, I'm trying to earn that respect because I'm providing valuable insight and content because I just happen to want to meet this person, all right?
So what I do,
You gotta break that barrier because he's put a barrier up,
Yeah.
and it's so hard sometimes to get through to those.
I'll give you an example of one of the things that I did, which is along those same lines, but a little different. Is that I went to an event where there was somebody who was presenting who was a very senior person who I thought would be a great person for me to meet. So at the end of his presentation, there's a gazillion people, so the only objective that I had was I just want his card so that I'll have his email address. He's not going to remember who I am. There were just too many people at this event. And one of the things that this guy talked about were, name badges, that people have, their picture, their name and stuff. And he was talking about how he implemented this thing in his company and how it was this wonderful thing. So what I do, I go to a place that makes chocolate stuff. I had a chocolate slab about yay big with my ID card, with the key points of why we should get together. I sent it to him. And of course it worked. Because again, so you've now come up with a way, but now maybe it's time to break out the, out of the box, different, something completely different that catches people off guard to say, wow, you're either a nutcase, stalker, or maybe you're somebody that I should actually take the time to meet. But again, great idea to do with the article, to sending it. But there may be other people who, when the article was published, the guy may have actually had other things that people sent to him. So, but if it's somebody that you really want to meet, you come up with creative things. They don't have to be really expensive, but they just different.
These are just people that are very extremely busy. They're trying to be polite. They don't know yet your story, so you're trying to get to the opportunity to tell your story.
You have to just be different.
And I'm working on that, but it's
Absolutely.
a process. Don't give up.
Absolutely.
After one or two.
Yeah, because that's all about sales. How many times? Just
ask for the sale 3 times the order.
Yeah. Any other comments, questions, thoughts? All right. So on that note, if you guys have cards with you, if you don't have cards, I can give you extra ones of my cards, and you can just write your name and email address on the back. And then what we will do is that we will do a here, we'll throw them in here because I don't have a deep box. All right, so cards.
I gave you my card if you wanted them.
Here, did you? Oh yeah, you threw yours in here already. Cool.
That is for me.
You're
Well,
out.
for you. Thank you.
Actually, I don't know.
Cool.
I go for coffee. figured out how to get past the gloss, just right on my forehead.
That's a good idea.
No, as much as
Oh,
I-
right.
No pennies for
Good
me.
job.
Okay.
Thank you. Did you?
No, I will, I have your card.
No, I know, but write your name and
I will send you a letter.
okay. Do you want to be in the raffle?
Okay, sure.
I mean, this is.
As a,
I mean, no, seriously, this is an Amazon gift card.
well, listen, do they sell liquor?
They sell liquor.
Cool. Do I have
Do
everybody?
they sell liquor?
Yeah, you can buy wine on
Here,
Amazon.
if you write your name and the email address on the back, that will count. Anybody else? Everybody else? Good, 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 good. Here you go. And then the drawing will be.
I like my chances.
So you have so you have little handout cards. A lot of people like them, stick them in their pocket when they're going to places or whatever. And then you've got a copy of all the slides. You've got my email address and card and information. Anybody, if I could be helpful, feel free to reach out afterwards. I enjoy doing this. Okay, so all right, all cards. The drum roll, please.